Welcome to Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust's virtual conference, Sharing Our Seas, Seals and People. We are excited to share an inspirational series of talks exploring a variety of aspects of seal conservation in the UK. And it's our 20th birthday. In that time, we've done 35,000 plus surveys, processed over 1 million photos for 72,000 plus seal IDs. To make sure we can continue this important work, check out our website to join our Wild Seal Supporter Scheme, back our crowdfunding campaign, or shop in our online store. Thank you for your support.
Hi, I'm Gillian Burke, and in case you don't know, which is a lot of people don't watch TV, which is great actually, because it means hopefully that people are out doing something outdoors. So if you don't watch TV, I'm Gillian Burke. I'm a presenter on Springwatch, on BBC Springwatch. And I'm also a patron of Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust, which I also think is kind of funny, really, because mostly patrons are royalty, but they got me. But anyway, it's a real pleasure and it's a real honour and a privilege to be a patron for this charity. It's a small charity that does really important work, in my view. So I've got a list of questions. We're going to try and rattle through these. Maybe not rattle through. Try and tell you a little bit more about myself, a little bit more about my work. Well, actually, I don't really do work. I just for the trust, but I do support their work. So how did I become a patron? Well, this actually is how I met Sue, I suppose, Sue Sayer, who is a key member of the trust. And I did an item for Springwatch several years back, one of the first items I did for the series, actually. And I was lucky enough to get to go to the Isles of Scilly. And one of the things that I've been asked to do was to film an item where I was snorkeling with grey seals out in the wild. And on the one hand, I was really excited about the prospect. Obviously, the idea of having a close encounter with a wild marine mammal is pretty cool. But I felt conflicted as well, because I didn't know if this was the message, the right message to put out, that approaching these wild animals, was that a good thing for them? How does that work? So I did a little bit of rooting around on the internet, as people do, and I came across the Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust, their work, and Sue Sayer's name, and got in touch and just said, hi, my name's Gillian and this is what I'm doing, and I just would appreciate a little bit of guidance on how to put this forward as, like, what's the best practice? If someone wants to go and snorkel with seals, what's the message? What can I say? So Sue was amazing. I got a little insight actually into Sue's dedication to her work and to the species in that one conversation by email. She was very supportive of us doing it. So that was the first kind of relief for me, was that, okay, this isn't a bad thing to be showing the public to do. Obviously there are ways and means that you can do this, but she gave me some really good advice and clear guidance really on how to sort of portray best practice. So that was kind of my first, I suppose, contact with the Research Trust. And that kind of set off a whole string of events in motion, which I'll come back to in a bit. So that was the first collaboration. I suppose I should tell you what she told me as well, shouldn't I, really? In a nutshell, I guess there are two sort of scenarios. And, if you are familiar with the work of the Trust, this is probably not going to be news to you, but it's worth saying nevertheless. The guidance I got was, in the water, seals feel much more comfortable. They are, well, when you watch them swim, any underwater footage, if you've ever had the chance to see that, they're clearly very comfortable in that environment. They're very mobile, agile, they're way faster and better at swimming than we will ever be. So in a sense, any encounter with seals in the wild, and when you're in the water, you're in their world. And if they choose to come up to you, they're doing it on their terms. The scenario is completely different, however, if it's not on their terms. So there are two other scenarios. One is if you're in a boat, any kind of behaviour that would encourage them to approach a boat is really dangerous for the seal. So that's not good. So don't feed them, that kind of thing. And also on land, when they're hauled out, that's when they feel the most vulnerable. And they're really not very good at moving about on land. They're very, I mean, honestly, it's comical if it wasn't, the fact that they feel so threatened if they are approached on land. So those are the scenarios where getting close to seal is not on their terms. They can't get away from you easily, or that contact, if it's in a boat, for example, is actually dangerous to them. So those, to me, that was like a really clear distinction of if you're in the water and a seal approaches you, it's doing so on its terms and it's most comfortable. So, the best thing if in that scenario is just to allow that encounter to happen and don't try and touch them, just let them be in control of that situation. So that was essentially, the guidance I got from Sue. Following on from there, Sue then asked me if I would be a patron for the charity. Like I said earlier, I thought that was quite funny initially. I was like, surely it's royalty that get to do stuff like that. But of course I said yes, because it felt like there was a really good fit, if I'm honest, just like, the conversations I'd had with Sue, I felt like she was someone I could communicate with. We sort of like just vibed really well. So, it just felt like an easy thing to say yes to. And interestingly, though, it was something that I was like, well, it kind of goes against the grain of the way I see the natural world, because I don't tend to have a favorite anything in terms of animals and wildlife. I'm not sort of elephants are great, or, I really love tigers. I just, for me, it's all connected, right from the microscopic, the little things, the invertebrates, the plants, everything's connected. So for me, it's like an experience rather than championing one particular animal. So becoming a patron for a single species charity like the Cornwall Seal Group Research Trust was a little bit of a challenge for me, because I thought, well, this isn't normally what I would do. I wouldn't want to support the work where you've only got like one species that you're focusing on or one habitat. Not that I think it's bad. I just thought if I'm going to put my time and energy, what I'm trying to do is get people to see connections with things. And then having thought of all of that, I kind of thought, well, actually, this is a good fit, because there are connections here. And seals are like these ambassadors or messengers from the sea. I say this a lot, so if you've heard it before, I'm so sorry. But I really do believe that. They're sort of this connection. They're sort of a marine mammal. I'm pointing that way. You can't see it. It's because we're just on the beach and that's where the sea is, so I'm pointing that way. Yeah, seals... that's their environment. That's where they feel most comfortable, but they have to come out on land for various parts of their life cycle. And they give us an opportunity to, I think it's more than, sometimes you use this word sentinel species or indicator species. Yes, you could survey sort of populations and what you can discover is that, well, entanglement with marine plastic in the ocean is a problem for lots of animals. Grey seals are great at showing us that problem, because they'll come out on land and you'll see bits of netting stuck around their necks. It's very distressing to see. So it's a powerful way of reminding us that there's a problem out there that otherwise would go on unseen. But I think more than that, they're like a gateway species. They're easy for us to relate to. There's a lot about seals that looks familiar. I mean, they look very sort of like canine features, really. They've got those long snouts, very endearing features, their eyes and stuff, and even the way they sort of behave in the water and on land. There's something about it, I think, that quite fundamentally we find easy to relate to. They're other mammals, and they look like, man's best friend, human's best friend, dogs. So I think for all those reasons, I felt like, oh, well, these are a species that can help, like as ambassadors, if you like, advocate for everything else that's out there that's harder to relate to. So even if it was a jellyfish or, I don't know, sea slugs, stuff like that, every single marine species is being impacted by human activity. And I think that's no exaggeration to say, whether it's chemical pollution, whether it's plastic pollution, whether it's habitat destruction, whether it's, oh my gosh, the list goes on, noise pollution, you name it. There's many, many challenges. So having a species like the grey seal to help us relate to that is really important. So that was another reason why I felt I could quite happily get involved and support the work of the Seal Group Research Trust, even though generally I try not to pick a favorite. hope that makes sense. There's a long explanation of why I said yes to this, isn't it? Sorry about that. So connections with seals, you know, I think I've sort of touched upon that. Take home messages and the future. Wow. Okay. Well, I'll give that a go. I think, you know, like I said earlier, one of the things that I'm trying to do in my work is integrate a lot more of what we know and how we behave as a species. We're an amazing species, actually, and I do sort of sometimes, I don't like the kind of narrative that we have, like, oh, we're, you know, like a cancer on the earth. We're not, you know, we've definitely caused a lot of problems, but we are an amazing species, and we have the capacity to change our behavior really quickly. And I think, actually, it's impossible to do a talk at the moment without mentioning the pandemic, these unprecedented times that we live in, which, you know, is quite true, but it's a very overused word. But yes, one thing we have learned about our species this year, in this crazy experiment that we find ourselves part of, is that our behavior can change really quickly, really, really quickly. And systems can change really quickly. So I feel like encouraged at the moment that, you know, we can see this, you know, for different reasons, obviously, you know, the real and present threat of getting sick with a virus that, you know, is a novel virus to our species is obviously been, you know, the thing that was needed for us to change some of our behavior. But I think we can learn from that and build on that now. And in terms of the future, what I think as a species we can do is take that learning and start looking at all areas of our behavior and how we impact the natural world, how we live in the natural world, how we're part of the natural world, and really start looking at how we can change our behavior. How that relates to seals and this species and the work of this Cornwall Seal Group Trust, I think is an interesting question, because one of the things that this species challenges us with is it's the idea of as wildlife enthusiasts, people who love going out to see nature, to have encounters, one of the things that we may need to start considering in terms of our behavior as people who support conservation work and like animals is how, when, you know, is it possible to love wildlife too much? That's quite a controversial thing to say, but seals are a really good example of when nature needs more space, and when can we give it more space, when we can be respectful, keep a distance. All of these things, this one species, can you imagine, can get us thinking about and hopefully teach us some really important lessons. So I guess, you know, in a way, I feel like I'm kind of coming back full circle. So from my first experience with grey seals, which was in the water, and having this incredible encounter where the seal literally swam up, muzzle to nose, in the water, and I could see its whiskers and its teeth, and I could feel its breath on my face as it kind of investigated me. You know, that was like about as close an encounter as I could possibly have wished for. Yet there are species that really suffer when we get too close, particularly when they're hauled out on land. There are species that really suffer because we are, you know, various activities that impact their environment out at sea as well. All the stuff I've mentioned earlier. So they're really interesting species to make us think really carefully about our behavior, and maybe, you know, in loving nature, we need to give it more space and keep a respectful distance and let it sort of breathe and watch from afar. Or maybe, you know, just be happy with the knowledge that they're out there somewhere safe. And that could, even that, be enough for us now. So big thoughts, big questions, but I do feel optimistic, partly as a survival strategy, to be honest, because if I wasn't, oh my gosh. But I find that being optimistic has this funny little habit of sometimes turning up good things. So that's the way I see the future at the moment. And I think there's some really incredible things that we could do to help not just grey seals, but our planet. We just need to get on with it. Anyway, thanks very much for listening.